Hello, eavesdroppers. Welcome to the Mix and Mash podcast. My name's McConnaughay. I'm here alongside Beccah Grace, and you're watching this either on the NJ Today YouTube channel or on mishmashers.com. On Mix and Match, we aim to talk about a wide variety of topics, and for today's video, we're sitting down to share our thoughts on the 2015 video game Until Dawn. So what are your initial thoughts on Until Dawn? Like, what were you, whenever you were just learning about it, what were your thoughts on it? What did you expect?
I was really excited about the element of choice and the butterfly effect that I had heard about it. And I was really excited to see how that affected the game and the relationships between the characters.
Which they mentioned over and over again about the butterfly effect. Like at one point, whatever his name is, like boom,
Chris.
butterfly. Yeah.
Boom, butterfly effect over and over again.
I'm more acquainted with those kinds of games though, like with the multiple choice. Like I'm a big fan of the Telltale games. I recently actually did a video with Scott where we talked about like these cinematic games. And so I'm more acquainted with like Heavy Rain, with the Telltale games, which include like Tales for the Borderlands, which you still haven't played, which is one game I'm actually really looking forward to you actually getting to play. So like those thoughts, I knew what to expect from there. I was just really, really interested in the idea of a slasher video game because it's not something that we've seen before. Like horror video games don't usually, and I should enunciate better, horror video games, because every time I talk to Scott with it, he corrects me and tells me we don't get a lot of horror video games. Like we've gotten them more now than ever. Before, back in like the PlayStation days, we were like reduced to games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, which were great, but we didn't have a whole wide range of variety. So to see a slasher video game was pretty interesting to me, and that's what I was excited for. Like, until recently, I didn't have a PlayStation 4, so I was excited about the idea of getting. And this was one of the first games I had to get was Until Dawn. So that was my impression, is I was excited for a slasher game, and I was looking forward to it. The video game was developed by Supermassive Games and published exclusively on the PlayStation by Sony Computer Entertainment, and is set in the fictional Blackwood Mountain located in western Canada. The story tells the tale of 8 teenagers who return to the mountain a year after a tragedy that led to the disappearance of 2 girls. The sisters of a guy named Joshua, who is the one who invited the 7 other teenagers, hoping to find a little bit of closure and help himself through the grieving process. Everything takes a considerable turn, however, as the group finds themselves under attack by an apparent psycho and are faced with having to survive on the mountain until dawn. And roll credits. First and foremost, we talked a little bit about the game style. What do you think about the game style, like from your perspective?
I thought for the most part it was beautiful. The only thing that I thought was a little weird was the facial expressions themselves.
That's funny because I mentioned, wrote that in like my little bullet points. Is the graphics were good for the most part, like the facial expressions, like they're a little bit over exaggerated.
Yes.
Like everyone's like teeth were like always constantly over like.
And it was like, sometimes it was almost like we tripped and fell into Uncanny Valley. But I did enjoy the way that it looked. I mean, the forest looked gorgeous. They put so much work into it. And the audio was just as good. It sounded like you were actually walking in snow. And that really excited me. Because I felt like I was in the game, almost to the point to where I was so conflicted with my decisions. I was like, I don't want to mess up, and then I did, and killed people.
That's something too. Is like with games like Telltale's games like The Walking Dead and all Wolf Among Us. I like them. I like them a lot, but it feels very much like a moving graphic novel, so to speak. Whereas it doesn't feel like a video game as much as this does. Like it has a more kind of watching experience. You don't feel very immersed into it as a game itself, and I feel like this one did. Like through small things, like like as you said, the music was really really well done.
Yes.
The scenery was really well done. I even think, like, a lot of people don't like QuickTime events. Like, they don't like those things where it, like, jumps out at you and it's like, press triangle, press this, or press this, and those things. I actually found that in this game, it made me a lot more immersed because it gave me a reason to feel like I should be uh, like on my toes and be really, really focused in, because at some point, whenever we first played this game, we lost like 2 or 3 people. Emily's boyfriend. Yeah,
Yes.
I just can't remember his name. We lost him and
Matt. Matt. That was
Matt.
his
Yeah.
name. All right. We lost Matt.
And like it was until it was later on we realized that, hey, we can just pause it and restart it. But at that time, in our first playthrough, we didn't even notice. So like there was a little bit at stake there, like with little things, and like the feature where it was like don't breathe, and like you didn't have to. And it's really simple too with that. You can just put down your controller. We did that at some point.
But until we figured that out, it was almost terrifying because you're like, hold still, hold still, hold still, and then your hand would just twitch and
Yeah.
you'd be dead.
And like I have shaky hands in general. I don't know, my hands naturally just kind of shake. So those kinds of moments are not just difficult for me; they're sometimes impossible. So like it definitely added. It felt more like there was more gameplay elements into it, and I think this is probably the as far as gameplay style is concerned of this type of game, of this kind of cinematic experience. I'd say this is probably the best of its kind. Like it captures it more than Telltale does, and it doesn't have the awkwardness of like a Heavy Rain or a Quantum Dream kind of game where the uh, mechanics and movements are a little bit awkward, a little bit twitchy. Like it feels very, very well done.
I think the only part that I really felt awkward playing this game is whenever you had to pick up and turn
Oh
something.
yeah, and you have
Yeah,
to. And we adjusted that too. Like, focuses on the controller, and you have to turn it. And that part, we just kind of turned it off, and we switched it. We had to hold R2 and move the analog or something like that. Yeah, those parts can be a little bit awkward.
and while it was clunky, it was still so much easier than trying to use the motion control.
So let's go ahead and talk about the overall story for this game. First and foremost, for those that haven't played the game, we're gonna try and go ahead and avoid spoilers. But we'll say something along the lines of this game presents itself as something that it mostly is not. It presents itself as a slasher game, but at the same time, while it has elements of that, it has more supernatural elements as well. And so, what was your thoughts on the story overall?
I liked the way that it was presented. One of the things I really liked was you could really see into the heart of Josh, the brother, and you could see how much he was trying to cover up for his pain from his two missing sisters. And I thought that was really, really well done. And and though it was presented a bit more like a slasher film, and as you go along into the game itself, it feels less like a slasher film and almost like a mystery game where you're trying to solve murders as they happen. But it's so intriguing that Josh ends up being such a tragic character. And I admit that I did spoil myself and I tried very hard.
Yeah, you watched theories on it. I mean, if we look at it as a slasher, there's a twist in it. I predicted that from the get go. By the way,
Yeah.
I knew pretty early on that twist. I didn't expect the information that happened thereafter, but it seemed kind of obvious what was going on at first. What they eventually did with these supernatural elements, however, were very, very unique, and it was. I liked a lot of the things too. Something that I think that the overall story captures particularly well is that I think that it has a lot of small details that interconnect. And just for the record, we played this game 3 times. We played it, the first playthrough we did in one sitting. The second playthrough we did in one sitting. And then we went back to it for what we dubbed pretty much the asshole run, where we killed everybody.
And we were just complete dicks. It was actually a lot of fun, especially to play as a personality so drastically different from my own. And I'm like, all right, what would I do? And let's not do that. And it ended up having some pretty hilarious consequences.
And so, do you think that you would recommend a second playthrough for someone? Do you think this game has enough changes to it, like in the second and third playthrough, to warrant another playthrough?
Oh yes, definitely. I would definitely say that one should at least play it through twice.
I would say twice is probably a good, because there are certain elements. In particular, there is things with the Ashley character and what she does after certain points. If you do it like an asshole run like we did, those are some things that are particularly enjoyable. A lot of things, though, it feels like it's very tailored toward playing it a certain way. I
Mhm.
thought, at least, like you're supposed to play it in a genuine kind of way, and I think that's where the best experience is. So at the very least, I would probably recommend a second playthrough, but I think that the best experience is probably the first one because it
Mhm.
gives you the most complete. Like, there's a certain way it's intended, I think. Um, like just certain things, like at some points you're putting the moves on this girl, and like we went ahead and seen what happened, like depending on how you treat her and all this, and the only big difference is like the amount of clothes she's wearing. But at the end of the day, like it still plays itself off in the same way. So like there are certain like differences you can come across, but it's not like drastically changing the story, which is not necessarily a criticism, just an acknowledgement that it's not, you can't completely change the course of the story.
One thing that I would recommend is on your first playthrough, I would just play it to play it. Make mistakes, accidentally kill
Yeah, and
people,
like don't go
and
back and like save them either. Just like kind of just enjoy it. Let the story take its course, and I think that'll be an enjoyable experience.
and then go back and try your particular run that you would do. Me, the second playthrough for me was the be as nice as possible to everyone,
Yeah, and like
and
save everyone.
yeah, I wanted everyone to be happy, which is almost possible, but not entirely. But I did my best, and that made me feel good. But I admit that if I had known what decisions to make in the first run, I wouldn't have had as much fun with the first run. I think I cried at certain parts, like when the dog died.
You cried during Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. Uh, you might have cried during Boss Baby. I don't know.
I know I
Uh,
cried during A Dog's Purpose,
Yeah, well,
so
that one's more of a tearjerker, and you cried during Logan, but like Logan makes sense because like even I was like when she did the nothing happened, no spoilers at all. But even those had some touch. I mean, Logan had some touching moments. I would say that, and there's also a lot of like collectibles in this game. Like we went back and whenever we did the playthroughs, we got the platinum trophy. We went ahead and got all the collectibles, and there are a lot of foreshadowings in the game. Like you can find out the twist or the mystery of, or at least the initial twist early on before it even reveals itself if you just look around
hmm
and do some exploration. Like we didn't find it our first playthrough, but in our second playthrough we were like, hey, there's that stuff. And so it's pretty cool. There's a lot of collectibles, a lot of details. And there's also a lot of familiar actors in this game. Like they didn't go ahead and get a bunch of people we have never seen before. There, or at the very least, it's kind of like Heavy Rain, or not Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, where Beyond Two Souls had Ellen Page and William Dafoe's character
hmm
models in it. This game has Hayden
Pansonair.
Hayden
Hayden.
Hayden hard last name. She does some things, and it has the actor from iRobot, who I was like, hey, uh, who I'm not even that familiar with, but I'm like, you're from iRobot, and so it's got some familiar faces in it, and the voice acting is pretty good all the way through.
Although I will point out that some of the voice actors were
Some of
better than
them,
others.
some of them, in particular, I think, which brings us to one other thing I wanted to bring up is uh, who is your favorite character and who is your least favorite character? I think we'll both pretty much be in agreement on this, especially the least favorite character.
My favorite character was actually pretty easy. Mine was what was her name? The blonde chick that was played by Hayden.
Sam.
Sam. She was my favorite. She felt genuine and heartfelt, but at the same time brave. And I just really liked her character, and I thought that she was really well played by her voice actor. I thought that it came across really well done. My least favorite was Emily. Not only was she absolutely unlikable, And her voice acting was pretty subpar, but she was just terrible. I was very happy during the asshole run when we killed her because it was like about damn time, bitch.
Yeah. I would say, whenever I first played Until Dawn, I was pretty convinced that Hayden's character Sam was the main character. Like, I went into it thinking that. But as I played it, I realized she's not really the main character. It's an ensemble, for one, but also, I would go ahead and say, I won't say that my favorite character was Joshua, because I'm like, he has the most depth. I would say my favorite character through and through is Michael, depending on which way you play him. Like, whenever we play him in the asshole run, he's not very redeemable. But whenever we played him for, the first way, which is generally just being normal and decent, he comes across very, very well. And, like, he's the character you probably spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have, like, a encounter with a dog. There's a lot of moments with him that are enjoyable, and he just comes off very, very likable.
And I was very surprised by that because at the very beginning, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to like this guy. He's just being a general meanie, and I don't know if I'm going to like him. But then he just ends up opening up so well. He goes from being just this playboy feeling to a genuine guy who really cares about his friends and just wants to try and get everyone home.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it's your first impression comes off a little sketchy, but then like even in our second playthrough, as I started to look at him differently, what he was, just because I felt like I knew him more, like little things that he did, he came off a lot more genuine in the second and third playthrough. So to kind of wrap this up and put together our thoughts, what would you say you think about Until Dawn as a whole?
As a whole, I would say it was definitely an enjoyable game. I really, really enjoyed it, as you could probably tell since I couldn't stop playing it.
Yeah.
And I think the first run, we finished playing it about 4 a.m. We just did one long run, and it was great. My heart, I don't think it stopped pitter pattering the entire game. And it was involving, and I thought the story was pretty well done, and it was beautiful and disturbing. A well-rounded horror game, most definitely. And that makes me very happy because a lot of games these days that get the most work put into them are the classics, like the Final Fantasy franchise, where they pour in thousands of dollars and, well, much, much more than that, but
Yeah.
lots and lots of money for these beautiful characters and normally really well done stories, and the music is always great. And it was great to see something that was a little bit more out there, like a horror movie, but at the same time, it was kind of had a nice twist to it, but it still had beautiful music and pretty well done, voice acting. And a lot of the scenes were really well done, and it was an overall wonderful game. So I'd say that it's definitely a game that is worth playing twice, and I would give it, I'd say at least an 8 out of 10, and I would definitely play it again, even though I've played it 3 times in less than a month.
I think you might be on your own playing that one again. Not because it was bad, just because after 3 playthroughs, like, because this isn't really the kind of game that, like, I mean, you played a second time, maybe even a third time to get all the information and all the details out, but there's got to be its replay value starts to diminish. I think that, well, for starters, I'm always excited to see a horror video game done in this way. It had high production values, had notable voice actors, a notable cast, a story that it looks kind of superficial and kind of one-dimensional, like familiar, something you've seen before, and then you start to unravel the little mystery and you realize it's got more depth than you originally perceived. And while I don't necessarily think it's like the upper echelon of storytelling or necessarily my favorite cinematic game, that still goes to Tales from the Borderlands. I'm pretty convinced, even though that one was a little bit sketchy as far as production value is concerned. I hold this one in pretty high regard. I have mostly complimentary thoughts about it. It's a very good game. I would highly recommend it. Well, that's pretty much all we have for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will leave a comment in the comment section below, Leave a comment in the comment section below letting us know what you thought about Until Dawn. Beccah, is there anything you want to add?
I wanted to say hello and have a good night, eavesdroppers.